I am 87, and I want to tell you about the 6 ways I kept trying to stay useful long after my own body had already asked me to sit down. 6. I counted them one morning this spring, sitting on my step with the coffee going cold in my hand, and it took me the better part of that morning to be honest about all 6 of them. When I finished, I did not feel ashamed. I did not feel proud either. I felt honest, maybe for the first time in a very long while. Because there is a thing the old ones kept an elder for, and for most of my life, I had it backwards. Come closer to the fire a minute. Sit down. You do not have to say anything. I am not telling you that work is a bad thing. My hands are glad for every year they were busy. I am not telling you to stop, and I am not telling you that rest is the answer to everything. What I am telling you is smaller and harder than that. Usefulness was never the reason an elder was kept. It was the reason he was worked. There is a whole life sitting in the difference between those 2 sentences, and it took me 87 years and 6 confessions to find where that difference lives. My grandmother used to say that a house does not keep the fire because the fire is busy. It keeps the fire because the fire is where everybody comes to sit. She said that with her back to me, over a pot, the way she said all her true things. And my grandfather, who worked until his hands would not close all the way, said a harder one. He said a man who is only worth his work has agreed to be thrown away the day the work ends. I heard that when I was 9 years old, and it meant nothing to me. I heard it again at 72, on the Monday after they gave me a card everybody had signed and sent me home, and it meant everything, and by then it was far too late to hear it gently. 6 ways I argued with my grandfather's saying. Here is the first. The first confession is the smallest one, and it is the one my daughter saw long before I did. I fixed things that were not broken. Her gate swung fine. I shimmed it anyway. The faucet in her kitchen did not drip, and I took it apart on a Saturday and put it back together and told her it ran better now. Her porch light worked. I rewired it. I told myself I was helping. What I was doing was manufacturing a reason for her to need me, because I no longer trusted that she would want me without one. My grandmother had a picture for that. She said a river that keeps digging away at its own bank will one day find the water gone around it. Every little repair took another handful out of the bank I was standing on. And when my daughter finally stopped calling me about the gate, I did not think she is doing fine. I thought she does not need me anymore. Those are not the same sentence. For 15 years, I could not tell them apart. Before I give you the second one, let me set something down beside you. The Native Way is the name of the small book where I wrote these things down slower and quieter than I'm able to say them out loud. You will find the link in the description under this video. It holds the same things I tell you here, only with more room around them. It is there if your heart wants it, and I am here either way, tonight and tomorrow, whether you ever open it or not. That is all I will say about it. Now let me give you the second way I tried to stay useful, the second confession. I took on the work nobody had asked me to do, and then I sat out in my truck afterward and resented that nobody had asked. My son heats his place with wood. One October he was working doubles and the weather turned early, and I drove out there and split and stacked his whole winter in 2 days in the rain at 81 years old, with my knees telling me the truth the entire time. He came home. He looked at that stack a long moment. He said, "You did not have to do this." And he said, "Thank you." And then he went inside to his supper, because he had been on his feet since before daylight, and I drove home furious. Not at him. I understand that now. I was furious because I had hauled something out there that I wanted handed back to me, and he had never once been told he was holding it. My grandfather had a saying about the ox. He said an ox that keeps pulling after the field is already turned is not working anymore. He is only refusing to be unhitched. That was me. The field was turned. My son's life was turned. He had it. He was carrying it. And I kept walking the same row, because stopping meant standing in his yard with nothing in my hands, finding out whether anybody would come out to see me anyway. Have you ever done a kindness that was really a demand wearing work gloves? I did it for years. and the resentment afterward was the proof. If the help had been a true help, there would have been nothing left over in my chest, waiting to be answered, and there was a smaller version of that ox in me nearly every week of the year. I would drive to my daughter's place before she was awake and rake her whole yard, every leaf, and then I would stand in her kitchen with the rake still in my hand until she noticed it. I never once said, "I would like to be told I did well." I made that woman guess it over and over for 30 years. A man can spend most of his life asking for one plain sentence and never once say the sentence out loud. The third confession is about the telephone. I answered it like a service instead of a visit. When my granddaughter called, I did not say, "Tell me how you are." I said, "What do you need?" Cheerfully. Instantly. Before she had finished saying hello, I was already reaching for the pencil, already asking what day, already telling her I could bring the ladder Tuesday. She would say, "I just called to talk," and I did not know what to do with that. Talking had no task in it. Talking had no finish, nothing to hand over at the end, no way to know afterward whether I had done it well. So I would find her a job anyway. I would ask about her car. I would ask about her gutters. My grandmother used to say that water runs straight through a hand that will not close. I was always ready with a job. I was never once ready with an hour. And an hour was the only thing that girl was ever calling for. Do you know what it teaches a young person to learn that the way to reach you is to need something from you? They stop calling for nothing at all, and nothing at all is where every bit of the love was hiding. There was one evening, very late in all of this, when she called me, and I was laid up with a bad hip and could not have carried a ladder from one side of a room to the other. So I had nothing to hand her, not one thing. We talked for 2 hours about a dog she had when she was 6 years old. That is the best telephone call of my whole life. And I had to be laid flat before I would let it happen. The fourth confession. I gave advice as a way of staying necessary, and I gave it long before anybody wanted it. My daughter-in-law stood at my sink one evening drying the same plate over and over, and she began to say something about her mother that she had clearly been carrying up the road all day. She got about 9 words into it, and I gave her 3 steps and a conclusion. She said, "You are right," and she put the plate down, and she never started that sentence again in my house. Not once in 11 years. There was an old woman in the valley when I was a boy that everybody called Grandmother Weaver. People walked a long way to sit with her, and she almost never said anything. Her hands kept moving, and she let you finish. My own mother went to her once, weeping, and came back steady, and when I asked what the old woman had told her, my mother said, "She did not tell me one thing." Grandmother Weaver used to say that seed thrown on ground nobody has opened is not a harvest. It is only a mess for the birds. Advice was fast. That was the whole appeal of it. Sitting quiet with somebody takes an hour and leaves you nothing to show for the hour. Advice let me be the one who knew, and I know exactly why I wanted it fast. If I sat there and only listened, then at the end of the evening I would have no proof that I had been in the room at all. Advice leaves a mark on a conversation. Listening leaves none. But nobody's ground opens while you are standing over it, throwing. And everything I truly wanted to leave behind me could only ever have been left the other way. The fifth confession is the one I am least proud of. I kept my hands busy so that I would never have to sit still with myself. The spring after I buried my wife, I painted a barn that did not need paint. 11 days, 2 coats. Then I cleaned out a shed. Then I dug a culvert nobody had asked about in March with the ground still half frozen. I did not sit down in that house for most of a year. The house had her quiet in it, and her quiet had questions in it. My grandmother said a wind that will not lie down will never let the dust settle, and a man who will not let his own dust settle will never once see the bottom of his own water. That is what all that motion was. I was keeping myself stirred up so I could not see down through myself. My son drove out to that barn on about the 9th day and sat down on an upturned bucket and said nothing for a long while. Then he said, "You can stop now." I said, "It needs the second coat." He said, "That is not what I meant." and I went and got the second coat. That is how close it came to me. I heard it, I understood it, I walked around it, and I painted. And grief is not the only thing a man outruns with a hammer in his hand. Some of you are running from a room in your own house right now, and you have got a very good reason to be busy, and the reason is real, and it is also a door you keep walking past. The sixth confession is the heaviest, and it sits underneath all 5 of the others. I measured the whole day by what I had produced in it, and any day that produced nothing, I threw away. A day I sat on the porch and watched the light move across the field and did not fix, build, haul, or fetch one single thing. I called that day wasted, out loud sometimes, in front of my own grandchildren. I did that arithmetic every evening of my adult life, 60-some years of evenings, and on most of them I sentenced the day. I knew a man named Eli. Eli retired on a Friday. By Sunday he had washed both cars. By Christmas he had done everything in that house twice, and by spring he was gone. They wrote something down on the form. I have never once thought it was the whole story. Eli did not run out of days. Eli ran out of ways to count them. My grandfather said a man who spends the afternoon counting the leaves has not once stood in the shade. My granddaughter asked me one evening what I had done with my day. I told her, nothing, and I said it the way a man admits something. She said, "You sat out on the steps with me for an hour and told me about the flood year." I had not counted that. It had never once entered the arithmetic, and that hour is the only thing out of that entire year that either one of us can still tell you about. I counted leaves for 60 years. I stood under that tree nearly every day of my life, and I could tell you the number, and I could not tell you the cool of it. So there they are, all 6. Now let me tell you the thing that took me until 87 to understand, the thing that is the whole reason I sat down on that step and counted at all. The old ones did not keep an elder because he could still work. They kept him for what he had seen. He had seen a winter like this one, 60 years back, and he knew what the sky did the week before it came. He had seen a marriage go right to the edge and not go over. He had seen a young man exactly like this young man, and he knew which of that boy's fears were the real ones, and which ones would pass on their own. That is not production. You cannot stack it in a yard or hand it across a fence. No young family can grow it in a season, and no amount of hauling and fixing can stand in for it. Old Man Standing Pine was the tallest tree on that whole ridge when I was young, and one year he simply quit going up. My grandfather took me out to see it. He said now the work is finished, and now he is of some use. The pine that stops growing tall is the one that finally gives shade. And I want to be clear with you, because I know some of you are sitting there with your own list starting to form in your chest. Naming these 6 was not the same as hating myself for them. What I wrote on that step was 6 things I did. It was not 6 things I am. A habit is only a road I walked so many times the grass quit growing on it. A road can be walked another way. A man is not his road. So let me gather these up for you now, the way my grandmother would gather the ends of her shawl into one hand before she stood. I fixed what was not broken so somebody would still need me. I did the work nobody asked for and then held it against them. I answered the telephone like a service instead of a visit. I handed out advice to keep myself necessary. I kept my hands moving so I would not have to sit with myself, and I threw away every day that did not produce. Now I am going to turn all 6 of those around and set them down facing you, and you can do what you like with them. Do you fix things at your children's houses that were never broken? When you help, is any part of you waiting for the thank you to arrive a certain way? When that phone rings, do you reach for a job or do you reach for a chair? Do you answer people before they have finished the sentence? And when a whole day goes by and nothing comes of it, no errand, no repair, nothing you could name to somebody at supper, do you still let yourself have that day, or do you hand it back? I am not asking you to answer me. I am asking you to notice which of those 6 you did not have to think about, because your chest answered before your head did. That one is yours. That is the one my grandfather was talking about. I know what some of you are asking because I asked it on that step with my cold coffee. Is it too late for me? I'm 87 years old, and here is all I can honestly tell you. Age did not take away my noticing. It has not taken away yours either. You can still catch one of these in your own hands while you are doing it. And you can still make one ordinary choice about it, this week, in your own kitchen. 1 hour given instead of one job offered. I'm not going to promise you what comes of that. I'm only telling you the noticing and the choosing are both still yours. Nothing about you got used up. I would like to hear from you now. Of those 6, which number landed closest to home? Which one did you recognize before I finished saying it? Tell me the number down in the comments, and tell me who you were doing it for. I read them. I read every single one, usually in the morning, usually with the coffee going cold in my hand again. And then come back and sit down with me again tomorrow. There is more of this, and I am in no hurry, and neither is the evening. The fire keeps. So do I.